The waves crashed relentlessly against the jagged rocks beneath the ancient lighthouse of WIRM's Point. Time had rusted its iron railings, and moss crawled over its stone base like slow green fire. The villagers said the light hadn't shone in over 20 years, not since the last keeper vanished without a trace. But one misty morning, a stranger arrived. Elara Mayfield stood at the edge of the sea, her boots damp from the salt spray, eyes fixed on the tower ahead. Her taxi driver, an elderly man named Harold, had dropped her off reluctantly, muttering something about bad luck in that place before speeding off. Elara was used to being alone. A marine historian by profession, she had spent the last 10 years chasing coastal myths and shipwreck tales. But this assignment was different. This one felt personal. She clutched a leather-bound journal in her bag, her late grandfather's. It had been found in a trunk, untouched for decades, and inside were pages filled with detailed notes about WIRM's Point Lighthouse, scribbled in his distinct, looping handwriting. The last entry read, "There is something in the light. It watches when no one else does." No one in the family had ever mentioned his connection to WIRM's Point. He was a quiet man, a retired sailor who spoke more with his eyes than his lips. But now Elara believed he might have been the last keeper. The lighthouse. Inside, the lighthouse was colder than she expected. Dust floated through the beams of her flashlight as she moved carefully across the rotting wooden floorboards. Sea charts hung from rusted nails. A cracked mirror caught her reflection, tired, pale, curious. The stairs spiraled upward in a tight, dizzying climb. Each step creaked beneath her weight, echoing in the hollow chamber like whispers. At the top was the lantern room, its great glass windows smeared with salt and grime. The light apparatus stood still, broken, like a dead eye watching the sea. But what caught her attention wasn't the machinery. It was the notebook, identical to her grandfather's, resting on the metal table. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Pages and pages of handwriting. But these weren't her grandfather's words. The light is not what powers it. The sea is not what surrounds it. This place remembers. Who had written this? Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from below. She froze. Someone else was in the lighthouse. The town's silence. The next morning, Elara walked into the town center, a cluster of cottages and weather-worn shops. She stopped at a small tea house run by a woman named Maureen. "I'm researching the lighthouse," Elara said over her cup of tea. "Do you know anything about the last keeper?" Maureen's expression tightened. "You're not from around here, are you?" Elara shook her head. "There's nothing good in that place. The last man to live there, your grandfather, you say, he disappeared. People say he drowned himself, but the sea never gave him back. The fog took him." "The fog." Maureen leaned in. "There are nights when the fog comes so thick, it moves like it's alive. And sometimes, the light flickers, even though there's no power." Elara's blood ran cold. She returned to the lighthouse that evening, determined to stay the night. Night at the tower. The wind howled. The structure groaned under its own weight. Elara sat in the keeper's quarters, reading through the second notebook. It spoke of the sea whisperer, a presence in the mist, older than the town, older than the sea itself. Her grandfather had written, "When the fog comes in threes, stay out of the tower." That night the fog came. Once. Then again. Then once more. 3 times. And with it came a sound. Not the wind. Not the sea. A humming. Deep. Resonant. Not mechanical but almost alive. Elara climbed to the lantern room again. And there, in the fog beyond the glass, a figure stood on the rocks below. Still. Watching. The fog swirled like a living thing, dancing against the glass of the lantern room. Elara pressed her hand to the window, her breath clouding the pane. The figure on the rocks didn't move. It stood motionless, cloaked in shadow, half swallowed by mist. She blinked, and it was gone. A chill ran through her spine. She stumbled back, her mind spinning. Who, or what, had she just seen? Her flashlight flickered once, then twice, then died. The hidden chamber. Elara descended quickly, her heart pounding in her chest. As she reached the main floor, her foot caught on a floorboard, which creaked unnaturally. When she steadied herself, she noticed something: scratches on the floor, as if something had been dragged or hidden. Using a rusted crowbar from the tool shed outside, she pried the board loose. Beneath was a trapdoor. Dust and sea air wafted up as she opened it, revealing a narrow wooden ladder leading into darkness. Elara hesitated, but only for a second. She climbed down. The chamber was damp and small, lined with old maritime equipment, shelves of books, and a strange metallic contraption that resembled a compass, but it spun wildly in all directions. On the far wall, words were carved into stone. "The light is not a beacon. It is a barrier." She stepped closer and saw something else. A photograph. Faded.
Torn.
It was her grandfather, standing next to a man she didn't recognize. Behind them, the lighthouse. But the light was glowing, even though it had supposedly gone dark years before. The keeper before him. As dawn broke, Elara took the photograph to Maureen in the village. Maureen gasped. "That's Thomas Bale. He was the keeper before your grandfather. Disappeared, too. Rumor was he never left the lighthouse." "Why didn't anyone tell me this?" "Because we were afraid," Maureen said. "Not of your grandfather. Of the thing he was guarding." Elara's voice was dry. "What thing?" Maureen hesitated, then whispered, "The fog." The sea whispers. That night, Elara sat again in the lantern room, the strange compass device beside her. Fog crawled toward the tower once more, thick and swirling. Then came the sound, the low hum she'd heard before. But this time it formed a pattern, a rhythm, almost like words. "You are the lightkeeper now." She spun, heart racing. No one was there. And yet, the light above her head began to stir. The ancient mechanism groaned to life. The lens rotated. A blinding beam shot out into the fog. For the first time in decades, the lighthouse shone. Elara ran to the windows. Far below, on the rocks, the figure had returned. But now it was clearer.
A man.
Soaked in seawater, eyes glowing faintly blue. Her grandfather. The truth in the light. He raised his hand and pointed, not at her but at the sea. Elara followed his gaze and saw something impossible. Shapes moving beneath the surface. Massive.
Silent.
Watching. The fog wasn't just weather. It was alive. Sentient. And the light wasn't just to guide ships.
It was to keep the fog at bay.
Her grandfather had stayed not to man the lighthouse, but to contain what waited beyond it. Now it was her turn. The journal entries made sense now. The traps. The symbols. The silence. WIRM's point wasn't abandoned. It was a prison. And the fog was trying to escape. One final entry. Weeks passed. Elara remained in the lighthouse. At night, the fog came. And each time, the light blazed. People in the village began to notice strange things again. The hum in the mist, the flickering of street lamps. But they also saw the light from the tower return, steady and bright. The keeper had come home. And in her new journal, Elara wrote, "There is something in the light. It watches when no one else does. I understand now. The sea forgets, but the lighthouse remembers."